Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming along to this webinar this afternoon. I think we have some people joining us from the States as well, so it may well be morning there. So good morning to you guys as well. My name's Andrew Longland. I'm the Managing Director of HIT Technology, a premium solutions partner in the UK. And we're hosting this customer webinar today with our partner TRAILD. We will be looking at their product and how it can help you streamline, automate, and protect your accounts payable. We'll move on to the next slide. Thanks, Warren. So I'm joined today by three great people from TRAILD and the TRAILD team. So we have Daniel, who's General Manager for TRAILD in EMEA, and Warren, who's a Regional Manager for TRAILD in EMEA as well. And then Ashton, who is one of the solutions engineers at TRAILD and has spent a lot of time working on TRAILD and SYSPRO projects, so knows the product very, very well in terms of integrating with SYSPRO. Before we get into the webinar in detail and start looking at TRAILD and what it can do, a couple of things. First, on housekeeping point, we're going to have a Q&A session towards the end where you'll be able to ask your questions. Please feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A function within Zoom. You can do that during the presentation as well if you like, and I'll pick those up at the end and we'll go through those. But yeah, we'll make sure that we answer as many other questions as we possibly can. And the other thing is I just want to give a bit of background around HIT Technology, who we are, what we do. Some of you may not know of us, but we're an independent and UK-owned business that's been around for over 16 years with SYSPRO at its core from the very beginning. We're now recognised as the largest independent SYSPRO partner in the UK. And we have a team of 14 very well experienced professionals offering consultancy-led solutions in and around the SYSPRO ERP space. And I say consultancy-led, that is at the very core of how we operate. We look at doing things in a tailored and agile way to help our customers and provide expert advice and guidance around SYSPRO and products that integrate with it, like TRAILD, who we're going to hear from today and look at their product. So I shall hand over to the TRAILD guys at this point, who will start taking you through things.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Sorry, I just jumped out of there so we can Sarah in as well. So welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I think it's always really important to just start this with some kind of that header level kind of information around, why pick TRAILD. I think it's critical to this. We have a native SYSPRO integration. We're a globally certified ISV. So with SYSPRO, which obviously means licensing is included, the business objects are required for the integration. It also means we kind of have the tick of approval from a technical point of view. We've got 150 customers using our integration with SYSPRO globally, and a lot of them are saving up to 85% of time on that manual processing side, manual approvals, manual GL allocations. They're saving hours and hours weekly, and that just stacks up over time. The other key thing is because we've got so much experience being a globally certified ISV, in terms of the integration implementation side, we're not implementing an ERP, we're implementing a really robust solution, and the implementation is days, not months. So really easy to get up and running, and we're a plug and play solution, so using exporting invoices straight away. And the other key thing that we kind of like to talk to is just to highlight some of the key problems we're solving for customers. So, there's this picture of a stack of invoices, and we speak to a lot of SYSPRO customers who are running really kind of legacy processes. If they're not printing invoices and scanning them in, they're definitely passing invoices around the organization using email, leaving things on people's desks, stapling things to documents. asking approvals via Microsoft Teams. TRAILD's just a really wonderful streamlining of that process, getting away from all those manual interventions, manually matching to POs. And we really streamline that process to make it as automated and efficient as possible. And then on the flip side, there's also that protection. So obviously, when you're going through hundreds, thousands of invoices monthly, we all make mistakes. TRAILD's really fantastic at highlighting those mistakes, those anomalies as they come into the business. This kind of visual, I'm not going to run through each point why TRAILD's a great solution and why others are different. And I think the important thing to highlight about TRAILD is we're an evolving tech company established 9 years ago that really uses cutting edge AI machine learning to constantly improve the user's experience with our product. A lot of legacy AP solutions in the market are using template learning, and you need to really teach the system on a supplier, and build those reading functionality out. Our OCR technology is best in market, and will fill in data extract invoices at extremely high percentages of accuracy straight away. The other thing we like to also talk about is, obviously we've spoken about streamlining and protecting, streamlining and automating. The third pillar of TRAILD is all around protection. There's some pretty alarming statistics kind of on the left-hand side. I don't like to go through those individually. I prefer to just talk about to this middle story. So man pleads guilty to stealing $100 million from Google and Facebook by sending fake invoices. The reason I like to bring attention to this is, these are pretty large organizations with really complex operations, tech first organizations. And if they're susceptible to things like invoice fraud, impersonation fraud, then a lot of the, mum and dad, family owned or legacy SYSPRO businesses are definitely exposed to some of these threats. Before Sarah, can you speak? Can we hear you?
Yeah, I've just been asked to mute my mic. So,
no, fantastic. Welcome to the call, and thank you so much for joining. Do you just want to introduce yourself quickly, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Sarah. I'm the finance director for a manufacturing company based in the Midlands in the UK. And we've been using TRAILD, I think, nearly 2 years now. And I've been a SYSPRO user for 24 years, and so really used to that environment.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to maybe just share initially, before TRAILD, what were the kind of challenges you were facing that kind of brought you about to a solution through Andrew like TRAILD?
Yeah, of course. So I think the biggest thing for me was the amount of time, when you do an analysis of the amount of time, not just in the finance team, but across the business, how much time was being spent on processing AP invoices was unbelievable. Obviously, we're trying to move into the digital age, and we were scanning, we were taking PDF copies of invoices, typing them into SYSPRO manually. They were going out to each department manager or budget holder for authorization. They had to code the invoices, they had to sign it off. Invoices could get lost in the system. There was a lot of heated discussions, shall we say, around who had an invoice and when it didn't get paid, and whose fault it was and stuff like that. So it was quite an onerous system. And then Andrew asked me to look at TRAILD, and to be honest, in the beginning I wasn't quite sure, because I could see the savings in time and what have you. But for me, I have to say, the thing that really sold me on it was the risk mitigation. We're part of a large group, and we're constantly being attacked by fraudsters with the whole inserting themselves into email chains and stuff. So actually, the sweet bit that actually sold me on it was that. But that said, it has saved at least one full-time person's job in the business. Not to say, obviously, that we got rid of that person. They moved on to a different role. but it just meant that as they moved on to as part of their personal development, they then didn't need replacing, because we'd kind of removed that role from the business just through the time. So, and that's only in the finance team. It has freed up a huge amount of time across the business.
Fantastic. The second question was around like post-trailed. You know, what have you seen? Obviously, you've talked about you know, the reduction in time and manual effort and invoices being centralized. Is there anything else that have been the key kind of benefits of starting
I think
TRAILD?
also speeding up the payment process. Because invoices did get lost. Somebody might have thought, oh, I can't be bothered to go and find somewhere to scan that invoice to put it into the system, etc. The fact that they get an email every morning to say, come on, you've got invoices to sign off, has massively helped the finance team as well, because you get a lot less shouty phone calls when you pay your bills on time, because you had the invoice from the person that may previously have been sitting on it because it was onerous to approve it. And that said, we've also started looking at zero-touch invoicing, which would actually remove the requirement for yet another role in the business at some point this year.
Fantastic. And maybe the last one that I think is an important one, because we always communicate TRAILD as a plug-and-play solution that's incredibly fast time to value for the customer. Just want to talk a little bit about, after being onboarded, was the value instant? Talk to me a little bit about that experience.
I'd say it was instant. I think once everybody got over the gripe of, oh, it's a new system to learn, and they'd taken the time to set themselves up and actually read the documentation that we'd given them, because it's such a simple process to follow. But I think sometimes people are a bit slow to adopt new processes because they just feel like it's more work, not less work. But word got around pretty quickly, actually. It was a really good system, and how much time people were, you know, the water cooler discussions, as we call them, people going, oh my goodness, I'm saving so much time with this new TRAILD stuff. And so then the kind of the slower adopters, should we call them, they then sort of pushed on a bit and got up and running, because they could then hear everybody else talking about the benefits of it.
Fantastic. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining and for sharing that experience. I'm going to jump into showing the software. As I like to say, let the software do the talking. This is the TRAILD in tray for all things AP related. So if I just grab this invoice, I just want you to pay attention. This is the Groper invoice. It'll be important later in the demonstration. So I can drag and drop here and upload that. This isn't a very common way to upload invoices. Most of our customers will use an auto forward function. So they might have an inbox set up, something business name at ap.co.uk. Any invoice that lands in that inbox will automatically be forwarded into this in tray, and it'll land in what we call a draft status. So the way to think about draft is that initial processing page for an invoice. Typically, and this is what Sarah was talking about, someone's typing in all the information. So as this invoice gets processed, our OCR tool, so that optical character recognition, is reading that document. It's identifying and reading an invoice number or a PO number, matching it to a supplier, and so on and so forth. So that manual process of data extraction is all automated with our OCR tool. That's the first layer. The important thing to note on this page is this PO number column. You can see that there's a black icon here. So this is telling me that this has found a PO or GRN/receipt for matching in SYSPRO. So that's that live lookup into SYSPRO, automated PO and GRN or receipt matching. I'm now going to click in just to show you how we process an invoice. This is the invoice on the left-hand side. If you're stapling anything to the invoice from a document management point of view, you know, packing slips, delivery notes, COAs, whatever suitable for your business, you can upload this here. It's like a digital staple. It'll follow this document through its lifespan into SYSPRO. Then we have our header level information. So we've got invoice, ERP supplier, and price. Over here, you can see that there's a red box on the left-hand side of the screen. So this is the second layer of our OCR tool, which is a classification engine. So that classifies every string of text, number field, characters on the document as selectable. And the reason we do that is if, in case the OCR misidentifies the invoice number and the correct invoice detail is actually over here, I can click here, and our third layer of that OCR, which is machine learning enabled, will then remember how to read this supplier invoice and correctly read the invoice number of this invoice the next time we upload it. So what we see for new suppliers is we see an 85 to 90% field population accuracy. By the third supplier invoice, and you've taught it those manual adjustments, we get to 99 to 100% field population accuracy. So a very trusting system. Here you can see company, if you've got multiple company and SYSPRO set up, we'll pull those through, ERP supplier. You can see to read the purchase number off correctly, due date. Even though there's a due date on the document, which I'm going to select, you can see that it's default not to read it. It's because I have the system configured to default to the payment terms set up on the supplier card in SYSPRO. So again, flexibility in terms of how you want your system configured. Posting period, description, this is the invoice reference in SYSPRO. ERP supplier, this is what it's doing is pulling information from the supplier card in SYSPRO. SYSPRO is the single source of truth, so we don't use that for anything. What we use that for is to begin to flag anomalies. What do I mean by that? So the account number in SYSPRO for this supplier is 9712. The account number on this invoice ends in 9779. The system's telling me that the banking information doesn't match. The way to think about our anomaly detection is a spectrum. On the most simple side, we've got things like VAT, identifying the VAT information is correct, the supply address, banking information, duplicate invoice, excess supply charges. On the extreme side of that, we're looking at things like the logo, pixelation in the logo, pixelation across the invoice, if it's consistent with what you've been uploading previously. Then we've got the header level information. This is also the price. This is also a machine learning enabled field. So if there's an instance that you only want to pay the supplier in the subtotal always, you can do that. The system will learn that manual adjustment. We're now in this good section, and this is all where we're doing that PO and receipt matching. There's a 1 here, this red one. It's telling me there are receipts available. I can hit add receipted items. If I hover my mouse here, I'll see the PO and the receipt number these matches to, the quantity, the unit cost. Can also configure this to show me the part number, the delivery note, pull that information. And the reason I like to show this, I know in SYSPRO to do this and to get all this information on one screen, it's 30 to 40 keystrokes and managing and jumping from window to window. Nice thing here is we can see that there's a PPV highlighted. Couple different ways businesses can deal with this. We can set up a PPV threshold. So that can be a percentage amount or an absolute amount, 1% of invoice total or 150 pounds from the invoice total. And that will automatically be sent to a PPV GL account of your choosing. The other thing you can do is we could add a rounding line and you can pick any of your active GL codes, attribute that to. If you're using analysis codes, jobs, and materials, you can also attribute the cost to those. If you're not using those, this is configurable and you won't be able to select those. Last thing we can do here is, let's say this needs to go back to procurement. I can start to tag other people in my team. Say, add Tracy Ash, huge PPV, please call the supplier. Tracy will get a comment in an email saying she's been tagged in an invoice. She'll be able to click directly from an email into this invoice and follow up. Sarah talked about invoices floating around the organization and approvals and instances where there are PPV and not knowing where things are, potentially delaying payment to suppliers. This is a perfect instance where you'll have total visibility of where this invoice is in its process. You can push it along, put it on hold, mark it as urgent. That'll give the person who's responsible for it an extra nudge to get onto it. And the other thing we have here is I actually know this supplier quite well. And I know that they have always a delivery cost or freight. So it's not, I know it's not a PPV. The AI picks up that there is freight on the invoice. I can select freight. This should show the tax, include the tax, but it hasn't. That's okay. And I can add that line, and it's pre-configured to go to a freight charges GL code of my pre-selection. There's no PPV there. I think the last thing I'll show you, and this is just to show you a bit of the flexibility and that depth of integration with SYSPRO. If I go into this receipt selector, let's see if there are receipts available for this supplier. There are. Let's say, for example, this invoice came through with multiple lines, partial fulfillment, across POs, whatever it might be. You can see the system can start to select different PO, relate to different POs, different receipts. If there were 3 lines on this and the third one wasn't fulfilled, this would be red. You wouldn't be able to select it. When that next invoice came in with that line, it would automatically link up and be closed out and pushed back through to SYSPRO. So a lot of flexibility here to suit your or meet your business's needs. Let's discard that. I'm happy with that. I'm going to submit that. The thing I'm going to do now that hasn't gone through automatically, someone's touched my system. And oh, it's a duplicate, that's why. So this is perfect. This wasn't planned, but I'm going to have to deal with it now. Just to show you, this invoice from Groper that I have uploaded is a duplicate invoice. So it's flagging that here. If I get back to my invoices, I'm going to delete this one out because I want to show you what would happen. Delete that. This is exactly what you want, you know, keep you on your toes a little bit. I'm going to re-upload that and I'll go into people asking questions in the chat or perfect. If you want to maybe from now on put your questions in the question and answer section, it'll allow us to compile them with the answers after a bit easier, but I think the others have been answered, so perfect. This invoice is now being processed, this Groper one that I've submitted. Let's go in here while that processes. And all right, I'm going to come back to that invoice. What I'm going to do now instead is I'm going to look at a non-stock. This is another duplicate. Someone has cool ideas. Let me delete that. There we go. It's no longer flagging that duplicate. This is a non-stock related invoice. So if there's non-PO related, you can see start paging through the information. You know, I'm happy with all that, how the fields are being filled out. There's no anomalies being detected in this section. What we can do with non-PO related invoice, we can split them at a header level. So let's call this bikes in the invoice reference. Let's split that into 3 equal lines, apply that. You can see it'll create 3 identical lines, all with 33% each. And then you can start changing the GL code as required. So if you need to split these split these costs across different cost centers, you can easily do that here. All your active GL codes are pulled through live from SYSPRO. So that's super handy. A lot of businesses are manually calculating the split or writing each individual line individually, coding it accordingly. We can also remember that how you treat these invoices. So if it is a reoccurring expense that you want split a certain way, we can have that automated as well. I'm going to delete those and cancel that. We also have this add from invoice button. So if I click add from invoice, what you can see the system does is it reads the invoice on the left-hand side. So it's read each line, the quantity, and so on. The handy thing here that you'll be able to do is we can split this at a line level. So let's take this hire of men's bikes, for example, a quantity of 6. Let's say I want to split that into 3. It'll take that quantity of 6 and split it evenly into 3 lines, all of a quantity of 2. I can then split those costs across different GL codes as required. So again, a lot of can be a very manual and time consuming process can be extremely fast in TRAILD. Let's submit this through. And we're back where I wanted to be initially, so I'm very thankful for that. I talked about that grow per invoice. This is that 83 one that I've just re-uploaded. You can see here that it actually hasn't landed in a draft state. It's gone to pending review. This is what Sarah was referring to around touchless invoicing. The way to think about touchless invoicing is there's 4 gates within TRAILD. So you can have an invoice automatically submitted, gate 1, automatically processed. We could have it automatically approved, and we can have it automatically into SYSPRO. At each of those gates, we can set up thresholds for what you're happy to tolerate. But essentially, if a PO or a stock PO related invoice has been approved at PO level and it perfectly matches the invoice, you won't see that invoice because it'll land in your email, land in TRAILD, automatically be processed and go into SYSPRO. So that's that touchless invoicing that Sarah was talking about. The reason why my mind has stopped at pending review is I've set up a gate to say, hey, I just want it processed. I still want it to go through a normal approval process in TRAILD. Fantastic. I'm just going to show you one more invoice for processing. Invoice on the left-hand side. There's 8 pages. I actually know this is a supplier that either posts me a batch of invoices in one document or sends me a single PDF with multiple invoices. That splitting it out is extremely painful. You know, there could be 50 invoices in there. It takes a lot of time figuring out where something starts. And we have this split invoice functionality. And what the system will do is it'll make an informed guess where each invoice starts and ends based on new invoice numbers, new headers, new addresses, new banking information. And it'll make a suggestion. So this red invoice is one invoice, this blue is another one, this black invoice is another one, and these are 2 individual invoices. If I split the document, it'll delete this initial 8-page document, and it'll submit each of these invoices individually, and it'll run through that OCR data extraction process that I've just shown you. So a big time saver there. So I've just been talking about drafts. That's that initial processing. The next bucket we work in is pending review. The way to think of pending review now, this is invoices now getting routed around the organization based on a set of approval rules. Just to show you very flexibly, but approval rules will be set up for you at configuration and implementation. Just going to set up a standard rule to show you how it would look. New rule 10. This can be company specific. You start to add conditions. So let's say specific GL code is like every office expense that starts with 25 and followed by 4 characters. And then we add another condition, and the invoice total is greater than or equal to £1,000. Can then be routed to Adam or Brad. Then it needs to come to Louise, and then it needs to come to me. So you can see super flexible, super easy, can be based on essentially any field in terms of conditions, ERP supply country, total, GL codes, company specific, etc. And I'm just going to quickly go to these review. The key thing to note here again, we're now in pending review. A risk warning has now been associated, so low, medium, or high. If I click into a specific invoice, you can see it's super easy to see exactly how it's been treated. We're also machine agnostic, so if you're on your phone in the factory, in the farm, at home, you can approve this on the go and just hit approve. And just to give you a bit of a flavor for some of those risks, I'm going to go into this high risk invoice. This is the one that we processed initially that didn't have the payment details correct. I changed the payment date. So there's an urgent payment request. And this one also flagging an additional line that's not on a PO. That was that freight. We can then pass this invoice around the organization, reject it. All the rejected invoices can be designated to one person to deal with and investigate. So very flexible over there. And once I'm now approved to the invoices, invoices will then be approved. Again, this is another gate, so we can auto export from here if you want. Alternatively, you can select specific invoices. You could batch select a large group of invoices to be exported to SYSPRO. Let me see if I can now swap screens just to show you how things land in SYSPRO. So this is the AP supply query in SYSPRO. You can see that. Is that right? Fantastic. I'm going to look up a supplier. I know that I've got some invoices in here for. You look up their supplier, I can query their invoices. Here's an invoice. I can hit play on that. And you can see that it's posted all the information from TRAILD into SYSPRO with the copy of the PDF invoice. We can also suck through some more information from TRAILD. So if you want information like who's approved it, what the risk score was, who submitted it was, we can also default some information there for you, which can be extremely useful. There's also a hyperlink to take you directly back to the TRAILD in tray. Let me jump back to the other screen. Has that worked? We're back at my TRAILD in tray.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We've just done processing and exporting. The next thing I like to show is this payments tab. The way to think about payments is often the person who's responsible for executing payments and preparing that batch file or approving that batch file for payment is very detached from the day-to-day of the AP process, submitting, processing, approving. What we do is we'll take that batch file and we'll summarize it into what we call an executive payment summary. What we'll do is we'll summarize it based on supplier. We'll give you a bit of a histogram of how you paid them over time, and we'll flag any risks associated with invoice in this payment batch. So again, just to give you a bit of a flavor of those risks. This one, the invoice value is less than the payment value. So maybe there's been a mistake, an extra 50, an extra 0, something like that. It's also a new supplier. We've never paid this person previously. So maybe you want to call, verify banking information, etc. Here we've got one where we've got this payment exceeds previous payment to the supplier. Maybe you have suppliers you're paying frequently the same amount. This will just flag, hey, why are we paying them more this month, etc. And then lastly, there's an invoice in this batch from this supplier where the banking information doesn't match what's in TRAILD or what's in SYSPRO. Again, you can scroll through this. The reviewer can click into a specific supplier. They can get a quick view of all the invoices, what the risk score is, who's approved it, and so forth. They can then mark this as approved. That'll mark it as approved in SYSPRO, and you'll be able to execute your payment how you currently execute your payment. Next thing we like to show is this reporting capability. Essentially, what I can do is I can pick a period. So this is extremely useful sometimes for companies who are getting audited and have strange paper trails and can't find documents, etc. So if I just pick a larger period, because I don't have a huge amount of data in here, but what it'll do is it'll find all the invoices from the period you've selected. You can hit download report. It'll download a CSV file, which will look like this. What we'll do is we'll summarize or pull all the data from TRAILD, invoice number, PO number, who the supplier was, date, who's approved it, all sorts of information. We like to say finance people love Excel, so they can do all sorts of filters and use this however they like. Why this is great for auditing is because we can give an auditor read-only access to the system. They could click here. That'll take them directly to the TRAILD processing page for them to view how this invoice was processed, whether any risks associated with it. That's that invoice I showed you before. Alternatively, they can click on this second link, which will just take them to a digital copy of the invoice. So no more collecting loads and loads of information. It's all in here for your auditor. that has probably shown you the pillars of the program. What I like to say now is, if you want to start putting your questions in the chat.
So Warren, we do have one question. I think it's probably
Okay.
really pertinent time to look at it now whilst you've still got your trail session running. The question's from Amit, asking about quantity mismatches and how they're handled.
Okay, so there'll be a quantity mismatch between an invoice and PO, I'm assuming. Let me take this edit, for example. So what we can do here is obviously what will be flagged as a variance, assuming that there's a quantity variance that will probably flow onto a price variance. What the customer will be able to do is flexibly, they'll be able to hover their mouse here to be able to understand, hey, what is the quantity on the PO, on the receipt? Is there a mismatch? You can then start to pass this invoice around the organization internally to try and solve the problem. Maybe you need to hand it back to someone in procurement to speak to the supplier to reissue goods. And that's typically how we see customers handling that instance.
Excellent, thanks, Warren. We did have one other earlier, which has already been answered in the Q&A, which was from Chris, about how you interact with TRAILD, if it is all browser based, or if you're able to actually use it within SYSPRO. And between myself and Ashton, we've answered that, which is that all interaction with TRAILD is browser based, but you do have the ability to view the invoice document when you're in SYSPRO. But also you can surface you can surface any browser page, web page within a browser within the SYSPRO client. So you could do the same with TRAILD if you wanted to.
The great thing about that, there's two kind of great things. One is the system will refresh on the 5 minutes every 5 minutes. So if you create a new supplier in SYSPRO, that'll flow through to TRAILD within 3 to 5 minutes. So the other great thing is a lot of businesses we work with, we have people who actually don't require access to SYSPRO. They're really just processing invoices, or all they're doing is hitting approve on an invoice, whatever it might be. Being TRAILD is unlimited users, unlimited approvers. So commercially, it's only based on the number of invoices you're processing monthly. So having a central location for everything related to TRAILD is really easy from a user point of view. Just back to the question around the quantities, because I think I've missed one point. In the instance of partial fulfillment, which I talked about, so let's say, for example, this came through as a quantity of 4, it'll create a larger PPV per se. What would happen is, if this is partial fulfillment, the next time the invoice comes with the same PO number with a quantity of 1, the invoice would then, the PO and GRN would then be closed out, because that last unit has then arrived. So until it's been fully fulfilled, we won't close that PO out.
Excellent, thanks, Warren. There's no other questions in the Q&A at the moment, but I'm sure there will be some more coming.
First, while as people think of additional questions, I think kind of the key thing that we always like to highlight is kind of timed implementation. A lot of people, when they think around ISVs and ERP, SYSPRO, they kind of default to think, oh, another project, this is going to take months and I'm going to have to get internal buy-in, etc. Sarah talked around that plug and play nature and the extremely fast time to value. So the implementation period with TRAILD will be somewhere between 1 to 3 weeks. The general blocker to a 3-week implementation is coordinating training on the customer side. And then the time to value Sarah talked about is extremely fast. It's a plug and play solution. So customers are getting value out of the system as soon as they go live. Amit's asked another question around multiple lines. Let me just share my screen again. Fantastic. Amit, you've asked around multiple. Is that sharing yet? It's not sharing yet, is it? We do have invoices with multiple lines. The systems pick up line by line, or we have to pick that up. So if the system has multiple lines and there's POs, it'll automatically pull it through. As I said, if it's been partially fulfilled, we have this receipt selector, and we'll have all your open POs and receipts available for selection. So I think it's yes and yes. You won't have to do any line by line picking up. The system will automatically pick up each individual line, description, unit cost, extended cost, etc. The system also the system also processes credit notes just as you would a regular invoice. Then we have another question. How does price variance work on TRAILD, GR into PO, and PO to invoice? That's a good question. Ashton, do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah. So as you get a purchase price variance on SYSPRO, TRAILD does cater for the purchase price variance as well. So it's the variance between your invoice and your GRN. there would be a line that comes through as a PPV. And you can also specify where you want to actually, send that purchase price variance, or post, or should I say, post that variance. You can specify that count that it needs to go to.
Fantastic. I'm wary of time and not running towards the full hour, because I know people have back to back. The last thing we like to show and extend it, first of all, thank you to Andrew. But what we typically do after a webinar like this, we love to, it's part of the partnership with HIT, is to offer a promotion to customers, so people who have attended or any HIT customers. What we'll do is we offer 100% off the one-time implementation fee. If you're able to sign before the 30th of this month, and if not, that'll be 50% off if you're able to sign by the 31st of July. There's a one-off implementation cost of £3,000. So for a lot of businesses, can be quite a significant saving. Lastly, there's it's obviously a no lock-in contract, but for that first month, you'll get it free if you're able to sign by these dates.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying as well, Warren, you did touch on it earlier, that the pricing isn't based on number of approvers or number of users or anything like that. It is a subscription based on the number of invoices that you process. So it can work for any size business, really. It scales with you.
Yeah. Exactly right. We see businesses starting also with testing within some companies and then onboarding other companies. It can be flexibly to support the needs of the business and your confidence in the system, etc. So really flexible, and one of Daniel or Andrew or I can work through what's best for your business.
Absolutely, yeah. Just one point I wanted to pick up on as well, from what you demonstrated there, Warren, was around multiple currencies. I think we saw some South African rand there. We saw some British pounds, which is great. Just talk us through how TRAILD handles that, in terms of does it recognise the currency of the invoice, and does that currency then obviously need to be in SYSPRO already? How does all that work?
So a bit of both. The way to think about TRAILD is we like to mirror essentially what's in SYSPRO. So SYSPRO will be the single source of truth for supplier information, supplier currency information, and supplier tax categories and zones. So what we'll do is we'll default pull through the currency associated with a specific supplier and the tax codes associated with that supplier and the zone they're in. And that's what will be visible in that header level box on the TRAILD side. So TRAILD, yeah, the thing I like to always emphasize there is SYSPRO is always a source of truth. TRAILD just mirrors how your system's set up there. And it's the same on those GL sides and the tax, VAT applicable, withholding taxes. Everything's just mirrored from what's inside TRAILD, what's inside SYSPRO.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. And Sarah's just asked if she could mention one thing as well. Sarah, you okay to fire away?
Sorry, I didn't want to jump into your presentation. One thing that you didn't mention that kind of was critical to my decision-making process, so may be relevant to others, is the fact that when although it's a cloud-based system and we're uploading invoices to the cloud, the invoices do sit on your server or in your own domain. It's in your control. And the reason I mention that is because we were looking for an expenses app to use, and the thing that stopped me doing it was all cloud-based and we had no control over our own tax records. So it's quite important as a financial controller, finance director, to make sure that if something happens to that relationship, and I seriously don't think it would with TRAILD because it's great, the team are fantastic, but if as a responsible financial controller, you have to have that in the back of your mind and risk mitigation. So I just wanted to highlight to everybody that the invoices do sit on your own network, in your own control, and it is fantastic to be able to right click and open an invoice up. So it's right there in front of you. That's wonderful.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I mean, it's very useful. I think that header level information there is obviously TRAILD is cloud enabled, so we're Google Cloud hosted so, out of the UK and Netherlands, so GDPR compliant. As Sarah's mentioned, as part of the onboarding process, you'll also be able to select a location, a server of where you'd like to include all your data, all the invoices, etc. Should things not continue with TRAILD, we don't keep anything, it's all yours, and that's all included in our EULA and privacy agreements, which are available on our website.
Fantastic. Just one other thing I wanted to mention for everybody as well is we hear a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning these days, but I think TRAILD's a great example of machine learning in a real world scenario where it's making a big difference, because I think I might have got these numbers wrong, Warren, but I think you said 85 to 90% accuracy for a new supplier when it first sees that invoice, but the machine learning then adds to that, and then by the time it sees the next one, you're at sort of 99%, 100%. And I think that's a really good statistic to look at. And as I say, it's putting machine learning to a real world use for every business.
What we do as well, and in the follow up we can do this, but a lot of part of the demoing process with new customers, we kind of like to put our money where our mouth is per se, and show our OCR out of the box by getting the customer or the prospect to send through some of their invoices, and we just upload them into the system to show how good the OCR and machine learning is out of the box. It's kind of the bread and butter of our solution. So as part of the follow-up, we're more than happy to do that as well, for you to get a real sense of how the system would read your invoices straight out of the box. Fantastic. I'm just aware of time, and I know we just
have one more question come through.
Perfect.
Can Payable invoices be processed in TRAILD or SYSPRO or both? I'm pleased to see Daniel's nodding his head.
Yes, they can. So any e-invoicing or we're Payable compliant. So there's different formats, but I think the most common one may be relevant to the UK's XML. We can process XML files like a regular invoice, and we're also Payable compliant. So yeah, I think that answers that one.
Great question.
Fantastic. Well, as I said to Andrew, thank you so much for inviting so many of your customers, and a special mention to Sarah as well. We run a couple of these, and it's always extremely helpful to have a customer, especially someone as complimentary as yourself, Sarah. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Warren, and thanks to everybody else for attending this session. I think it's been very, very useful. Just sort of wrapping it up now, because we are heading towards the hour. If anybody has any further questions that they haven't had answers to during this session, or if they'd like to see more detail about TRAILD and how it interacts with SYSPRO, please do reach out to either myself or Warren or Daniel. We'll be pleased to set up another session specific to your needs. And as Warren mentioned earlier, we are running the offer on the implementation fee. So any deals signed by the end of this month, 100% discount on the implementation. Anything signed by the end of July would be 50%. So there's some good savings to be sought there. But yeah, reach out to us. More than happy to talk, and we can set up more sessions and talk through the commercials. I think Warren's just putting our contact details on screen. There we go. Thanks, Warren. As if by magic. And also I want to say well done to Warren, because I think we proved there that was a real life demo. It wasn't staged, because someone had even been messing with his data, which is great. Well done.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm glad I could get myself out of that one. But again, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. And we'll also be in touch. So thanks for having us.
No problem at all. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.